All right, everyone. Well, welcome to our second workshop in the Entrepreneurs Discord community. I'm really excited about today's forum. We got Matt, who brings a tremendous amount of data analytics experience, and he's going to talk to us about the basics of Tableau. But first, since I know this is a lot of people's first time using a stage channel, I think it's good to do a little tour. So if you look in the top right corner of your Discord screen, you should see like a little chat icon. So it looks like a little text bubble or chat bubble. So if you guys in the audience go ahead and click on that and just drop something in the chat, this is going to be a great way to leave questions without interrupting the flow of the presentation. So let's see. We got Tang saying hello. Got another hello from Ryan. Nico J-Man. there we go. All right. There we go. Nico's the dog. Okay, and then the second thing I want to point out is there's this raise hand feature. So if you don't want to, if you want to actually like speak out your questions or you don't want to type it all out, you can find this raise hand button at the bottom of your screen, and that'll allow you to request to get on stage and ask your question. So if everyone could click on that raise hand function now, so you can find it. So we got Ryan, Tang, J-Man. And then what happens with this raise hand function, I can invite Tang to come to the stage and speak. And then once he's up
Hello.
here, he can ask his question. And then he can jump back down to the audience. So it's a pretty nifty function.
Cool.
So, we're all, so with that, we're familiar. So again, I'm going to reintroduce Matt, bring in like 10 years of analytics experience. He's currently a vice president of data analytics at BlackRock. And I'm not going to delay any further. So Matt, take it away.
Thank you, Shane. That was a great introduction. I really can't add anything to that hasn't already been said. So I'll just get started with the presentation. I'll go ahead and share my screen. Are you able to see it? All good? I think you're on mute.
Yes. Yep. Got it.
Okay, cool. All right, so like Shaheen said, I'm just going to go over a quick tutorial on Tableau, going over the basics of Tableau, why it's useful, and then kind of just generally talk about why data visualizations are useful and why perhaps you should incorporate them into your organization if you're not already doing so. So this is the agenda, go over why one would use data visualizations, talk about different data visualization software solutions. So this is a focus on Tableau, but obviously there's a lot of competitors in this space, and there may be one tool that makes more sense for your use case than Tableau, so it's good to know the other options. Then after that, it'll be focused on Tableau. I'll talk a little about the price plan of Tableau, and then we'll just jump into the live demo. So just a few slides here, and then the demo really, I think, is the kind of the meat of the presentation where you're going to learn the most, hopefully. So this is kind of a general data analytics life cycle, and I say the word general loosely because there's really no such thing as a general life cycle. It varies very much case to case depending on what you're trying to accomplish, but this is a good template. Obviously, you have to start with some sort of data set. You need to be able to access some kind of data. I think most of the work is probably going to be collecting that data, performing any transformations and cleansing it. Often you're getting data that's unstructured or has a huge volume, so you have to find a way to cleanse that, transform it, and add whatever features and labels to it to make it conducive for any sort of meaningful analysis. So the analyze and the visualize part of this cycle is really where Tableau comes into play. Mostly the visualize, but I would say it touches on the analyze as well, because you can do analysis in Tableau in addition to the dashboarding and visualization part of it. So why use data visualizations? Really the best reason, I mean, there's a ton of reasons, but one of the main reasons is you want to tell a story from your data. Often you get data in a variety of forms. It's complicated. It's kind of hard to determine any outliers or meaningful trends from it. And I think your job as a data scientist or a data analytics developer is to take complicated data and transform it into a story that you can use to tell a marketing manager how well their campaigns are going, how, tell an engineer how well his product is doing, tell a sales manager how well their sales team is performing. It hits pretty much any use case you can think of. And I think it's important to kind of build a dashboard that a non-technical person can use and get immediate insights from. They can use it to see how they're doing in their day-to-day and make adjustments where necessary. So if you just give them raw data, like on the left, you just see a spreadsheet, it's hard to get any sort of meaningful insights out of that, right? You have to perform some sort of analysis on it in order to get anything meaningful. And that's why on the right, you have a variety of different visualization types. Each one makes sense for different use cases. So there's trend lines, there's bar graphs, there's area charts, there's pie charts. Each one makes sense for certain types of analysis. Obviously, a line graph is good for a time series analysis. A bar graph is good for comparison among different dimensions. So you have to kind of determine what visual is going to tell the best story, at least the story that you're trying to tell to your end user. So it's good to scope those things out before you actually even start developing. Start thinking about those requirements before you go in and actually start developing a dashboard. So here are a couple of other data visualization software solutions. There's a ton, but I would say these are kind of the market leaders. So Tableau is the one we're going to talk about. Power BI is Microsoft's data visualization software. It's, I would say, probably the second most popular. It's one I've used a good bit, and it's catching up quite a bit. I think its adoption has gone up over the years, and maybe it'll eclipse Tableau one day. I don't know. ClickSense is another one that I haven't spent a whole lot of time with, but just another dashboarding tool. And Looker, I believe, was purchased by Google Cloud, so I think it's integrated in the Google Cloud environment. I think it's also known as Google Data Studio, I believe. So if you're integrated into Google Cloud, then that is also a really good option. So like I said, I'm going to focus on Tableau. What is Tableau? It's a visual analytics platform transforming the way we use data to solve problems, empowering people and organizations to make the most out of their data. I just pulled that from the website. So I thought I'd let them tell you what Tableau is since they built it. The two main components of Tableau are Tableau Desktop, which is software that you download to your computer, and that's what we're going to focus on today. And then the other is Tableau Server. So if you want to share that desktop with all of your end users, often you would publish that on a Tableau Server environment. So it's a website that contains all these dashboards that you want to build, and you can share that with your end users. So if you work for a large company, potentially you have hundreds, thousands of users of this dashboard. You're not going to email a Tableau desktop file to all of them. You'd publish it on a server, and you'd give people different permissions, and they'd be able to access that dashboard through the Tableau server environment. So if you're working for any sort of large company or medium-sized company, that's going to be how you actually share the dashboard you build to your end users. This is the price plan. For the creator license, it's billed by user per month, billed annually, $70 a month. So obviously the more users you have, the more it's going to cost. I believe if you are a big enterprise, you can contact their sales team. You might get like a specialized price. So that probably varies depending on the organization, but this is what is on the website. So this is what probably a smaller organization is going to pay depending on how many users they have. Explorer and Viewer, you are basically just kind of smaller tiers of the price plan where you don't get as much development ability. But if you have individuals who are only going to be viewing dashboards or only going to be doing certain activities, then obviously those are cheaper options for those type of users. So okay, so that was a quick and dirty introduction to Tableau. I just want to kind of talk about the live demo. We'll be using a spreadsheet called Sample Superstore Data, which is a sample data spreadsheet that Tableau provides when you install it. And it basically contains sales and order information for different products. So we're going to talk about connecting to a data source, building basic visualizations, bringing those visualizations together in a dashboard, and then potentially adding some dynamic filtering. And this is the dashboard that we are going to create. So this is going to be the end product. So let me open up Tableau and let's get started. Okay, so this is Tableau Desktop. This is the interface. The first step is you got to connect to data, obviously. So without data, you really can't do anything in Tableau. And it makes it very obvious where you go to connect to that data. You click there. It gives you a lot of different options here. You can either connect to a file. It could be a Excel spreadsheet, a CSV. Uh, but most likely, if you're working for any sort of large company, you're going to be connecting to a database where you house all of your data. So they have all these different data connectors. All the kind of major database providers are here. So if you had a MySQL database that had all your reporting tables, oh, well, maybe that's not a good example. Let me do Postgres. PostgreSQL, you just provide the server, the database, and then whatever credentials or authentication method you want to connect to that database, and then it would show all the tables that you have, and you can actually bring those tables in as you need them. But for our analysis, we're just going to keep it simple and connect to a CSV file. So let me open that. So this, you basically just go wherever that CSV file is saved on your local machine. You would go there and you'd open it up. And so once you open that up, it gives you the tabs in that spreadsheet, and you can bring them in as you need to. And so let me try to remember. I believe we're bringing in the orders tab into this analysis. Oh, orders, people, and returns. Excellent. So actually, yeah, let's just bring in orders. So you bring in the tab that you want. It gives you a little output of some of the data, sample output. It shows you all the fields and what data type. It tries to uh, do its best to guess the data type for each field. If there was date field, it'll make it a date. Numeric fields, it'll make a number. You can always change it, manipulate it however you need to. But it usually does a pretty good job. If you want to bring in multiple tables, you can bring them in and join them together based on a common field. So if I wanted to add in people and join it based on a common field, Tableau often will guess. You can obviously change this, determine which fields align, and then you can incorporate fields from both of those data sources. So I'll bring in that, and I'll bring in returns. I don't know if I'll use all these, but it's just kind of good to have all those options available. So once you do that, I think we're all set here. There's two options when you're connecting to data. There's a live connection, which is basically connecting live to a data set, and you're always getting the most up-to-date information. So it's live querying every time you manipulate it in Tableau. It's giving you the latest information that's available in your database or in your spreadsheet. The negative to that is it's performing all your calculations and all your logic you build into the dashboard on the fly. So often the performance isn't going to be great unless you have a really powerful database. So honestly, most of the time I use this feature called extract, which is where Tableau will take the data and bring it into a Tableau extract, which is optimized for Tableau dashboarding. And it usually results in a much faster dashboard because it builds all those calculations in and it essentially caches them. The only negative to this is if you did want to see up-to-date data, you have to keep in mind that an extract has the data available when it was last refreshed, and so you can set a refresh schedule, and you can have it refresh daily, multiple times a day. But let's say you have it refreshed 9 a.m. daily, and we have an end user accessing it at 9 p.m. They have a 12-hour gap there where they're not getting data because the last time it was refreshed was 9 a.m. So you have to find that balance between wanting up-to-date information and wanting a dashboard that performs in a usable way. So this data set I think is pretty small, so we can go ahead and do a live connection. So I'll go ahead and get started. Once you connect to a data set, you have all the fields on the left here. It breaks them into dimension fields, which are blue, and measure fields, which are green. These are the fields you're going to aggregate. Sales, profit, you want to sum by the product or by the segment, anything that you're going to aggregate in any way are going to be measure fields. And you can always change them based on what you need. So sometimes it'll incorrectly tag something, so you can convert it or change the data type as you need to. Okay, so let's get started. So I think the first thing I want to do is I want to see how well sales are across all the different regions, just kind of get a sense by which regions are performing the best. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring region into the rows here. Everything is click and drag. It's usually pretty quick. It's very dynamic. It's pretty easy to click around and explore the data in Tableau and see meaningful visualizations without any custom coding. It's all just clicking and dragging, which is nice. So I want to see region. I'm going to bring in measure values, which is here, which is kind of bringing in all your different measure values. and then measure names. Why am I not seeing those? There we go. So that was like an easy way to see all the different measures you have, how they are separating between the different regions. And you can even sort if you want to see, the region with the most sales on the top. You can sort based on, let's say, sales to see which region has the most sales on top, and it sorts descending by that field. And you have a lot of other formatting options here. Like if you don't want to see the axis, but you want the values labeled on each bar, you can hold control and drag, and it kind of makes a copy of these little, I guess like little triangle, or not triangle, sorry, um, square looking things with rounded edges. They're called pills in Tableau. I don't know why they call them that. Maybe just like look like a pill. You can control and grab it, and it makes a copy, and it makes labels on everything, so your users are able to see the actual numbers behind those bars. So that's one. That's an easy way, quick and easy, to make an easy worksheet. I'm going to label this customer overview, and then I'm going to go ahead and make another worksheet. You just hit that little plus button, it makes another tab for you. And in this worksheet, I want to see if there's a relationship between profit and sales for each customer. And doing so is quite easy. You would just drag sales onto essentially the rows section, and then let's drag profit here. And then if you want to separate it by any sort of detail, in this case, we want to separate it by customer. We want to see each customer as a label on this scatter plot. You simply drag customer name into detail, and then it makes that visual for you. And if you want, you can even add trend lines. You can see if there's any sort of meaningful trend. It looks like the R squared value is pretty low, so not a very reliable trend there. But it gives you that option to see if you can make any predictions. You can do kind of basic regression using Tableau. I'm actually going to get rid of that trend line there. So this looks okay, but I think we can do more. One thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make a solid circle instead of just a bordered circle. I think that looks a little better. And I want to see profit ratio. Profit ratio is not something that you see here, but one thing you can do to add any additional fields that aren't already there is you can create a calculated field where you can combine data from the various fields in the database to create the analysis that you want. You have all these different functions that Tableau gives you. So you can do, absolute value. You can do some trigonometry. You have all these different functions here. So you kind of have a lot of options there. But I want to just do profit ratio, which is, I think, a pretty simple calculation. It's just the sum of profit over the sum of sales. See how well are these different products and these different customers are doing from a profit perspective. And then you can actually drag profit ratio over to color, and you can see that different color configuration for profit ratio, and you can change the color based on what makes sense. So I want to see things with a negative profit ratio as red. So I'm going to do red black. So red will be a negative profit, all the way to black will be a positive profit. So the blacker the better in this case. And you can clearly see, some of these that are dark red have very low profit rate, or very high profit ratio. No, low. Yeah, negative profit ratio. So they're losing money. So that's not good. So you get kind of those insights. As you add more elements to a visualization, you're able to see those things a lot clearer. If we just, did the scatter plot, we can see sort of a trend, but we really don't have a lot of insight into those products and those customers that have negative profit ratio. Like you can clearly see here, Cindy Stewart has a negative 1.165, which is like 101% profit ratio. It's not good. As a marketing manager or sales manager, you want visibility into that, and this gives you the ability to do that. So I think this looks pretty good. I'm going to go ahead and label this customer scatter. And I'm just going to add one more. I think one more useful visual would be customer ranking. So which customers are resulting in the most sales? And to do that, I would just open up a new tab here. I would drag customer name and then sum of sales. And you can easily apply different aggregations to this. So if I want to see average, median, you can even just standard deviations. You can easily switch that aggregation depending on what you want to see. I'm going to leave it as sum, and I'm going to sort based on the customers with the highest sales figures. So Sean Miller. So when you look at this, you think Sean Miller's doing a really good job, right? But I think it's good to also look at um, how well they're doing from a profit ratio perspective, because profit is obviously the most important thing. So if I drag profit ratio into the color, oh, that was the wrong one, profit ratio. There we go. I can see, and I'll change this color again to the red-black diverging color scheme. So it looks like Sean Miller, even though that person has the most sales, they actually have a negative profit ratio. So that's good insight, right? Because if you didn't have the profit ratio, if you weren't able to slice it by that element, and you're just looking at it by sales, you'd think Sean Miller is a good customer to target, but clearly, not so much. Something going on there. So I'll name that customer rank. So I think these are three good visuals. So really, the power of Tableau is bringing in multiple visuals into one dashboard and seeing them all together and potentially having them filter off each other. And so you can kind of slice the data in different ways and see if you can tell that story and try to narrow in on, potentially why Sean Miller has a low profit ratio, or why things are behaving in certain ways. And so you see this plus button. If you hover over it, you'll see new dashboard. You'll just click on that. And using new dashboard, you can actually bring in all those visuals into one pane. You can size it however you want. So you can like make it a little wider. You can increase the height. You can bring in a bunch of other different elements here. This might be for another session. There's a lot of kind of advanced capabilities here. But I think what we're going to do is we're just going to bring our elements into the dashboard and see how it all looks. So I'll bring in the customer overview. I'll bring in the customer scatter plot. You can resize things however you want. So if you want one thing smaller, or you want something taking up more room, you can resize them however you need to. Um, Sometimes you'll find there's like a lot of space, so you can actually, there's two different ways of bringing things onto a dashboard. There's tiled and there's floating. Tiled, it'll basically snap it into a specific part of the dashboard. Floating is you can literally grab it and float it anywhere you want. So for this case, I can click floating and bring this, let's say, over here, and then I can cancel that out and everything will readjust. So it's all pretty dynamic. So here you have a couple of different visualizations that slice the data in different ways. And I think another cool element of Tableau is you can have these build off each other. So if I want to have this be a filter where I select a name and it filters the other dashboards, I can just click on this use as filter, and then I select Sean Miller, and I can see, in this case, it's probably not very useful, but I can see kind of where they are in terms of their sales and profit. I can see all of their other dimensions. So in this case, it's interesting that the discount has been applied in the South and the East region. So that may be why they have a negative profit ratios, because you have a lot of discounts. If I click on Tamara, who has positive profit ratio, I would expect to see less discounts. Yeah, just one discount applied. So that allows you to get insight into that because you're clicking and you're using one visualization to filter other visualizations that have more information at their disposal. So that is that took what, 5-10 minutes. We were able to create 3 different visualizations, bring it all into a dashboard and get meaningful results. So I think that kind of just shows you that's just the basics of Tableau. You can add a lot more elements here. Like I said before, you can add trend lines, but you can add clustering. You can add kind of predictive capabilities here. So if I want to cluster different uh, customers together, it'll kind of automatically create clusters based on the sales and the profit figures. And you can, if you want to create 4 different clusters, you can. It'll do its best. It applies a clustering algorithm. So there's some basic capabilities there in terms of like predictive analytics or some basic algorithms. You could also, and this is kind of getting a little advanced, you can apply Python. If you say bring in like this calculated field, you can actually apply a Python function into Tableau. It'll run the Python dynamically and apply it to your data. So you can get really advanced in terms of the algorithms you want to perform. That might be a class for another day. This is the basics of Tableau, and even I haven't played around with that feature too much. So that is the basics there. One more thing I want to show is if you're interested in learning more about Tableau, there is this site called Tableau Public, which is where you can share your visualization. So if you make a visualization, you want to share it with the public. This is a free way of doing that. And if you go on here, you can see some trending visualizations, really, really interesting things that people have done, really stretch the capabilities of Tableau. And you can see, um, this person made this dashboard using Tableau. And I guess this is the Superstore dashboard. This is the same data set we're playing around with, but he spent obviously a lot more time, and he made. I mean, this is just a beautiful dashboard, and you can apply different metric filters. You can select years. And so Tableau Public is a really cool way to see the capabilities of Tableau. I often come here for ideas. If I'm trying to build a dashboard, I'll come here, I'll see what's trending. And sometimes you even can download the workbook and see the underlying logic that was used to build it. In this case, you can't, but sometimes you're able to do that. So I think that's the end of the content I wanted to share, but please let me know if there's anything else I missed, or if there's anybody who has any questions. Definitely happy to answer any questions that anybody has, or go over any other additional content if I didn't cover something that was already covered.
Thanks, Matt. That was a wonderful review and crash course in Tableau. If anyone has questions, feel free to drop them in the chat or go ahead and raise your hand and we'll pull you up on stage and we can get your question to Matt.
Hey,
Welcome,
Matt.
Tang.
Yeah.
So I
Thank.
have a new job in marketing where I have to do some data visualization. When would you recommend Tableau versus using something else just to show data to, like, excuse me, because, like I'm just trying to show my marketing director and chief operating officer, right? It's not like I have a whole lot of people to show and they're both technically competent. So is this a
Yeah.
time where Tableau would still be used or would you recommend something else?
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously there's a cost consideration there. So if it's not in the budget, there's other tools potentially you can use. Power BI, I believe, is free if you have a Microsoft license. That's another dashboarding tool. Excel's got some decent dashboard capabilities, but I would say Tableau, assume let's just hold price constant for now, which is unrealistic, but let's just say you have a license. I think, if you want to impress your boss, I mean, it's a great way of building a dashboard. I mean, we built this in 10 minutes, and you can get pretty quick insights. You don't have to do any custom coding. And often, if you're working at a company where you have data in a database, you can connect to that data and bring in. Tableau has good capability of handling a lot of data volume. I've built dashboards with hundreds of millions of records. So if there's a large amount of data volume, Tableau is a really good tool for aggregating that and building some meaningful analytics off of it. So I would say, there's always a good use case there. Obviously, there's a cost consideration, but if that's not something, if you have a license already, and you want to impress your manager, I mean, this is an excellent tool to build some pretty useful dashboards. Good question.
Any other questions? So I have a couple questions. So right now, your role, as I understand, is more like a consulting type of role where you're helping the customer success. What was it? What's the team you're?
It's kind of like an internal consulting role. So it's
Yeah,
client experience is the group I'm in,
client
BlackRock, and so we
experience.
work with a lot of different teams, all within BlackRock. So it's not like external clients, but um, we work with different teams within BlackRock. We work with like the customer servicing team. We work
Mm-hmm.
with, um, you know, investment managers, portfolio managers. So there's a lot of different subjects and data subject areas that we have to deal with. And so Tableau is the main tool we use for building dashboards. And we rely heavily on Tableau Server, which I touched briefly on, but that's how you share these dashboards with people within your organization, and you can apply permissions in Tableau Server. There's a lot of cool features there. Let's say you have a dashboard where there's 500 users of the dashboard, and some of them are in China, some of them are in England, some of them are in
Mm.
Australia, and you only want those people to see data relevant to them. You can implement row level security, which is what it's called, where if I'm a user in Australia and I go on Tableau Server and I look at this dashboard, it's only going to show me Australian data, or it's only going to show me Chinese data if I'm in China.
Mm-hmm.
It automatically applies those filters based on whatever criteria. So you can set those permissions up, which is
Wow.
important if you're dealing with sensitive data, and which often, like financial data or private data, like personal uh, data like social security numbers or anything like that, you have to be very careful. Tableau Server kind of gives you those permission capabilities really well.
That's really cool. So I was gonna ask how you use it in your day to day, but I feel like you kind of answered it right there. I have a more open ended question that doesn't really have a right answer. I feel, but what do you feel separates a good dashboard from a bad one?
I think one thing that I learned when I first started using Tableau is you don't want to make a dashboard to rule them all, which is
Mm,
a term I heard, which I love, which is basically, you give like way too many filters, you give way too many options, and you kind of make the end user have to do all the work. Like you can easily I can add filters here very easily. Like if I wanted to add a customer name filter, I can add, all kinds of other filters here. And you give, sometimes it's good to give the end user a lot of options, but if it becomes too overbearing,
yeah.
um, then it's not really, you're basically making them do all the work. So I think
Hmm.
it's good to have a dashboard with some capabilities that allow the end user to have some filtering, but also things that are immediately apparent. Like I can see immediately when I look at this dashboard, I can see outliers. And if I'm a marketing manager, if I'm a sales manager, I don't want to have to work to get to that information. I want to see it right
Yeah.
away. And I want to be able to easily drill down into it. So like I use this as a filter and I want to learn more about any of these outliers, I click on them and I can immediately see more details related to that. So I think it should be pretty seamless and it should be obvious how to get to those insights. That's what I would say is a kind of a good method when building these dashboards.
I really like that.
Yeah.
Any other questions from the audience? All right, well, if nothing else, we can all give Matt a round of applause quietly in our rooms. Thanks again, Matt. This was really insightful. And I hope we can do another session like this in the future.
Yeah, my pleasure. And if anybody has any more questions, feel free to email me. Um, I'm happy to help in any way. So thank you all for coming. I appreciate it on the Sunday morning.
Thanks again, Matt.